The strange part isn't what happened, it's why nobody talks about it. Today's business file, the day Mark Zuckerberg was offered $1 billion, in cash, for a website he'd started in a dorm room 2 years earlier. And he said no. Not let me think about it. Not let's negotiate. No, on the spot. In a room full of people who were ready to sign. Before we open this file any further, hit like, drop a comment with what you think you would have done in his position, and subscribe with notifications on, because the reason he said no is stranger than you think, and it's not the reason you're picturing right now. Here's the part that should stop you cold. At more than one point, not once, but several times, in the span of about 2 years, someone with a checkbook the size of a small country walked up to a 20-something college dropout and offered to make him instantly, permanently, generationally rich. And every single time he walked away from the table. If that were the whole story, it would just be a nice believe-in-yourself quote for a motivational poster. But it isn't the whole story. Because here's the twist nobody puts in the highlight reel. The same person who later turned down $1 billion had, a year earlier, tried to sell the exact same company for pocket change by comparison, and gotten laughed off. Something changed in between, and figuring out what changed is today's business file. James stares at his laptop screen, eyebrow raised, hand frozen over the mouse. He's looking at a throwback post, one of those "this happened X years ago today" memories, showing an old clunky version of a website he'd used every day back in college. It looks almost embarrassing now. Blue bars, tiny profile photos, and James thinks this thing was worth basically nothing once. Now it's worth more than the economies of most countries. Somewhere between nothing and everything, somebody had to decide not to cash out. James opens the yellow folder. Business file, open. And James can't help but picture himself in that boardroom, some 22-year-old version of himself, sweaty palms being handed a check for $1 billion, and somehow saying, "No thanks, I'm good." James is fairly sure he would have already spent it in his head 3 times over before the check even touched the table. A boat, a slightly nicer boat, a house shaped like the first boat. So whatever was going through Zuckerberg's head in that room, it clearly wasn't the same math the rest of us would be doing. Let's set the scene properly, because context is everything here. Facebook launched in February 2004, out of a Harvard dorm room, built by a 19-year-old named Mark Zuckerberg, as a way for college students to connect online. It spread from Harvard to other Ivy League schools, then to colleges across the country, the way a good rumor spreads at a party, fast and mostly by word of mouth. Within its first year, it wasn't just popular, it was the kind of popular that makes very rich people nervous. Because very rich people don't like watching something valuable happen without them. And so, almost immediately, the offers started rolling in. In 2005, when Facebook was barely a year old, Zuckerberg, yes, Zuckerberg the same guy, reportedly floated the idea of selling the entire company to MySpace, then the biggest social network on the planet, for around $75 million. MySpace's own executives said no. A few months later, the price came up again, closer to $750 million. MySpace said no again. Picture that for a second. The company that would one day be worth over $1 trillion was once turned down by MySpace. Somewhere, a MySpace executive from 2005 is having a very quiet, very private moment of regret. So here's your first real clue, and it's the one that should be bugging you. The story we usually hear is young genius refuses to sell his company. But the actual first chapter is the opposite. Young founder tries to sell his company, twice, and gets rejected. That doesn't sound like unshakable belief in a grand vision. That sounds like a college kid trying to cash out early. So what happened between "please buy this" and "get this offer out of my face"? Quick reminder while we sit with that one. If you're enjoying connecting these dots as much as James is, tap that like button and share this with the one friend who definitely would have sold. It genuinely helps more people find these business files. The company kept growing. By 2006, other media giants had noticed. Viacom, the entertainment company behind MTV, made a serious offer. Reports place it at around $750 million, with some accounts suggesting later talks pushed closer to $1.5 billion. The deal reportedly got far enough along that people inside the company thought it might actually happen, and then it fell apart over how much cash would be paid upfront versus later. Close, but no sale. Then came the offer that actually makes it into the history books. The summer of 2006, Yahoo, at the time one of the biggest names on the internet, offered to buy Facebook outright for $1 billion. Not up to, not eventually. $1 billion on the table immediately. And here's where it gets genuinely uncomfortable, because this wasn't just Zuckerberg's call to make a loan. Facebook's board sat down for what was supposed to be, by most accounts, a quick formality of a meeting. The other board members reportedly believed the deal should be accepted. The venture capitalists in the room believed it should be accepted. According to people who were there, Zuckerberg walked in, essentially said this was a formality and they weren't selling, and walked back out in under 10 minutes. Now, imagine being the only no vote in a room full of yes votes, when the yes would have made you a billionaire on a Tuesday. That takes either total confidence or complete delusion. And from the outside, in the summer of 2006, it was genuinely hard to tell which one you were watching. Here's a clue that rarely makes the headlines. According to Zuckerberg's own account, given years later, turning down that Yahoo offer didn't earn him applause inside the company. It nearly got him pushed out. He said the board actually tried to remove him as CEO afterward, in part because, in his words, he hadn't done a good enough job explaining the long-term vision to the people around him. Picture that. The decision history now treats as legendary almost cost him his own company, from the inside, before it ever had the chance to prove itself right. So now we've got a real mystery on our hands, and it's not the mystery you thought you were watching. It's not, why didn't he take the money? It's, what did he suddenly understand in 2006 that he clearly did not understand in 2005 when he was the one begging MySpace to buy him out? Stick with that question for a second, because the answer isn't, he got braver. Bravery doesn't show up out of nowhere. Something concrete changed. And the next clue is hiding in plain sight, in a business decision most people don't even think of as related to any of this. Between those early sell offers and the Yahoo meeting, Facebook had shipped a feature that, at the time, users absolutely hated: the news feed. Overnight, instead of visiting your friends' individual pages to check for updates, updates simply appeared, automatically, in a single scrolling stream. People revolted, there were petitions, there were angry group pages on Facebook itself, demanding it be removed. And yet, underneath all that outrage, something odd was happening. People were spending more time on the site than ever before, not less. The thing everyone said they hated was the thing that was quietly making the product more addictive, more essential, more valuable. That's your second real clue. In 2005, Facebook was popular. By 2006, Facebook understood something about how to keep people coming back. A mechanism, not just a moment. And a founder who's just discovered a repeatable growth engine looks at $1 billion offer very differently than a founder who's just riding a lucky wave. If you're starting to see where this connects, don't say it out loud yet. Drop your guess in the comments below, and let's see who gets there before the reveal. And if this kind of story is your thing, make sure you're subscribed, because we open a new business file every single week. Here's the piece that finally makes the whole picture click. It isn't really about the newsfeed itself. It's about what the newsfeed proved. It proved Facebook wasn't just a website anymore. It was a system that got smarter and stickier with scale, the more data and users it had. Selling a company like that for a fixed price, even a big one, means selling something whose value curve is still climbing, in exchange for a number that assumes it's already near the top. Zuckerberg wasn't just refusing a payday. He was refusing to sell a fire while it was still spreading, because he'd just gotten proof that it was going to keep spreading. And that, right there, is the aha moment. The no in 2006 wasn't a personality trait. It wasn't stubbornness or arrogance or main character energy. It was a founder who had just watched his own product accidentally reveal its true ceiling, deciding that no outsider's offer could possibly be pricing that ceiling correctly, because he was the only person who'd actually seen the data proving how high it went. The MySpace offers in 2005 got rejected by someone else, for a price that, in hindsight, was still fair for what Facebook was at the time. The Yahoo offer in 2006 got rejected by Zuckerberg for a price that was actually fair for what Facebook had been 6 months earlier. And he knew, because of what he'd just seen happen with the news feed, that 6 months earlier and right now were no longer the same company at all. He wasn't gambling on being rich later. He was refusing to sell a growth curve to someone who was still pricing it like a flat line. And honestly, picture the poor Yahoo negotiators walking out of that meeting, doing the math on what $1 billion was about to look like in the rearview mirror. That's a rough Monday. It's worth pausing here to give credit where it's due, because sitting on $1 billion no only matters if what comes after actually justifies it. Facebook kept growing. In 2007, Microsoft invested $240 million for a small stake in the company, a deal structured so that Facebook stayed independent, at a valuation of around $15 billion. Notice the shift. 2 years after Yahoo's $1 billion full buyout offer got rejected, the company wasn't selling for $15 billion. It was accepting investment while keeping full control, at a number 15 times higher. In 2012, Facebook went public, and today, Meta Platforms, the company Facebook eventually became, is regularly valued in the range of $1.5 trillion or more, one of the most valuable companies on Earth. Let's bring this back to something that actually applies to your life, because that's the whole point of opening these files. Most of us aren't sitting on billion-dollar acquisition offers, but almost all of us have faced a smaller version of this exact decision, the safe, guaranteed, good enough offer right now, versus the harder, riskier bet on something you have real evidence is still growing. Selling a house the moment it appreciates a little, instead of understanding why the neighborhood is changing. Leaving a small business the second it turns a modest profit, instead of asking what the next version of it could be worth. Taking the first decent job offer out of fear, instead of trusting the skill you can see compounding in yourself. The lesson from that Yahoo boardroom in 2006 isn't never sell anything, ever. Plenty of smart people sell at exactly the right moment. The lesson is this: before you take the guaranteed number, make sure you're not the only person in the room who's actually seen the evidence that the number is about to be wrong. Think about it like a family selling a small neighborhood bakery the moment a chain offers to buy them out. The check clears, everyone claps, and it feels like winning. But if that family is the only one who actually knows their Saturday morning line has tripled in the last 3 months, and the only one who's noticed a new office building going up 2 blocks away, then the buyer isn't paying for what the bakery is about to become, only for what it already was. Zuckerberg's billion-dollar no was really the same instinct, just with 9 extra zeros attached to it. Quick gut check for you before we close the file. Would you have taken the $1 billion in that room, or would you have said no? Genuinely. Comment below, because the honest answer says a lot about how you think about risk, and I want to know where you land. Mark Zuckerberg didn't refuse $1 billion because he was fearless. He refused it because he'd already seen the receipts nobody else in that room had seen yet. File closed. And here's the part that should genuinely stick with you. The very same founder who once begged MySpace to take $75 million off his hands became, less than 2 years later, the only person in a room of experienced investors willing to say no to 1,000 times that amount. The gap between those two moments isn't talent, it's evidence. Know your own numbers well enough, and you'll always know more than the person writing the check. If this file opened your eyes a little wider, that's exactly what this channel is for. So like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear this story, drop your thoughts in the comments, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss when a new business file drops. Speaking of files, here's a preview of next week's mystery. A beloved toy company once got so distracted chasing theme parks, clothing lines, and video games that it nearly went completely bankrupt, brought down not by a lack of imagination, but by too much of it. The company makes small plastic bricks you've probably stepped on barefoot at least once in your life. And the way it clawed its way back from the edge might be the most unlikely turnaround in toy industry history. That's next week's business file. See you then.